been a year, hasn't it? Gang, you heard. Since then, I moved to Glenwood in the east side of the city. I got a spell from the other school. Let me show you around my house. Just the dinner table, kitchen, my spare bedroom, bathroom, lounge room down here, garage. Up here is my room and my studio. Gang, I'm just waiting for my pizza arrive from Uber. Gang, you heard. Press play. Have fun for a day.
This is hard to explain, but I want to try. In my childhood home, my bedroom was on the second floor. Only one window. I was about 12, and my sister shared the room with me, but was at her dad's that night. I was getting ready for bed. My mom had me getting my pajamas and stuff ready, but the room was dark, and I hated when that happened, because I'd have to walk across the room to turn the light on, and it always scared me. I walked over to switch it on, and I saw this human-like type thing staring into my bedroom from outside my window. Its face was unlike anything I've ever seen in any movie, or literally anything else before. I was on the second floor too, and still somehow saw it so clearly that I remember telling my mom it was like it was floating. Again, it wasn't too late, and I wasn't even close to being asleep at this point, so it definitely wasn't a dream or anything like that. I knew I saw something, and it always stuck with me. I stood and stared at it for a solid few seconds, too, before bolting out of there. I remember the feeling as it stared back at me. I refused to sleep in my bedroom for about a whole year after that, and pretty much moved into the living room and stayed away from the windows. Every time I think about it now, 10 years later, I still get freaked out. I still always need to make sure every part of all my windows are completely covered. I've only told my now fiancé about this, but wasn't able to explain it to them properly either. Obviously, I know that this sounds, and is, completely ridiculous, but I've still never been able to explain it, or the feeling it gave me. Finally got the strength to Google this a few months back, and read a bunch of stories about other people experiencing eerily similar things too. So that, at least, was slightly comforting.
Oh, and my mom, she's pregnant. She's having a baby right now at the hospital.
I was house sitting for a period of about 3 weeks during my senior year of high school. The house was on a road that led pretty deep into the mountains, and I was only needed because a neighbor who lived about a half mile down the hill got mad when the dogs barked at night. I dealt with some actual menaces, mainly scaring coyotes off the chicken coop. But the entire time I was there, I was never at ease. The house was 3 stories tall, with the main entrance on a porch at the second floor. The bottom floor was mainly like a basement with a pool table, and the door to the stairway was able to be locked, so I kept it like that. Finally, the top floor was just the master bedroom and a balcony inside overlooking the living room. Every night before I slept, I would take the dogs around the house to check every corner, because I never felt like I was alone there. Finally, on the last night that I was doing this, the dogs and I finished checking the upstairs and were standing in the living room when the hairs on the back of my neck shot up, and I swear that someone was on the balcony and whispered, "It's a shame that you have to leave tomorrow." I grabbed the pellet gun for the coyotes and sprinted back up there with the dogs, and there was nothing there. Everything was exactly as it had been the whole time I was there.
He goes, so, here's your pizza we ordered. Thanks. Oh, go on, you too. Let's eat.
Ignored it at first,
The bun.
but then felt weird and was creeped out by Ben. I walked out of the bathroom to calm down, and then I finally see it. There's blood on the wall. It wasn't much, but it was definitely there, and it was dried. My girlfriend had the idea to push a chair up against the doorknob so that we could sleep knowing that we'd be a bit safer. It must have been about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning when we woke up to someone trying to open the door. It wasn't even like a drunk person stumbling around looking for their room. It was a quieter, stealthy attempted break-in. Whoever it was tried and couldn't get in, and then they left. There wasn't much sleeping that night. There's no chance we'll return to that motel. I went to my backyard to take my dog out to the bathroom one night over the summer, and I also had to pee, so I went over by a tree to relieve myself. While I was peeing, I heard someone whistle at me. I thought it must have been my imagination or the
Let's pause it. Unlock it. Walk it back up. Head downstairs. Head to bed. Wake up in the morning. Good night, boss. Good night, boss. Good night, guys. See you guys in the fucking morning, I guess. 5 in the morning. Head downstairs. Head to school, yo. Unlock it. Walk it back up. See you, boss. See you, boss. See you, guys. I'll see you when I catch a bus to the city. I live in the outskirts of Southside Glenwood. So I'll see you when I catch a bus to the city. Well, here we are to the city. School should be down here. Gang gang. School should be this way. Down here. Over here. Go towards here. Here we are, the school. My first day at my new school, yo. Gang gang, you heard. My first day, my new school. First class for the day is this class here. Good morning, class. Today for a new student, introduce yourself. So, hey everyone, my name is Kyle. I'm 16 years old. I'm 17 years old. I just turned 17. I'm new to this high school. I'm gonna go sit down now. Class dismissed. Cool. My second class for the day should be here. Good morning, class. Class dismissed. My last class for the day until the afternoon is class here. Good morning, class. Okay, class dismissed. Have fun at break. I wonder, is that oval here? I'm hoping the school have an oval can. Yes, it does. Gang gang, you heard. It fucking does have an oval. Yes, it does have a fucking oval can. Look at this shit. around here, dog. Press play.
Or something. But then they whistled again,
A bunch of
and I realized they were standing somewhere behind me. I froze in fear for about 10 seconds until I yelled for my dog and ran inside. I told my dad, the only other person at home, so he went outside with a gun and a flashlight. But there was no one there, of course. The next day I went out there, and I noticed that some of the bush's limbs were pushed back and broken off in some places right where they were standing. I still have no idea who it was. It scared the hell out of me. It was around 2 o'clock in the morning. I took my clothes off and went to sleep. A minute later, something hit me in my head. It was one of my socks. When I take them off, I throw them in the corner of my room. So someone threw it back at me. But there was no one in my room when I turned the light on. It may not sound so scary, but you weren't there. No, there were no fans in my bedroom. There was no way that my sock could have hit me in the head unless someone was in my room. I went camping with 2 friends a few years ago. We went pretty far away from civilization. The nearest town had a population of 30 people and was an hour away from the lake where we were at. It was cool. I usually try to get away while camping, but this was the most extreme to date, and you could feel it. During the first night, the 3 of us were sleeping in the tent when I woke up to the noise of something brushing against the tent. Our tent was around 5 feet tall at its peak, and whatever it was outside the tent was brushing against it near the top. I have never in my life been filled with such true fear. I've camped a lot, and I've had some run-ins with bears and other animals, and I've been scared before, but this feeling was different. I knew that it wasn't an animal outside. I stayed laying there completely still with my heart beating out of my chest, as whoever this was methodically brushing against the tent. It wasn't making any other noise. It was just going back and forth, as if they knew I was awake and that it was scaring the hell out of me. I put my finger up to my face and made the shh gesture before slowly poking my friend, who was sleeping facing me. He heard the noise immediately, and his face dropped. He was wide awake looking at me as we just stared at each other wide-eyed. He spent a lot of time growing up on a reserve in the accompanying mostly untouched land in coastal BC, but later explained that he never experienced anything like this before. So we laid there for a minute, wide awake, practically shaking with fear, and then the next thing we know, we both wake up in the morning. We woke up at the same time, and immediately started asking what the hell that was last night, what had happened. We both felt so awake at the time, and we were having trouble understanding how we just fell asleep. We explained it to our other friend as he awoke to us frantically recapping the evening. When we left the tent and went back to the site, everything looked normal. There was a half-full box of Ritz crackers that we had left out untouched. The one thing that did look different is we had left a stack of red plastic cups out on the table, and they were all melted on one side, to the point where we couldn't pull them out because they had a new indented mold. We spent the whole day trying to figure out how possibly that could have occurred. It makes no sense. It was nowhere near a fire. One of my friends fell very ill as the day went on. We decided to leave that site after that next night, and camped the other 2 nights of our planned trip at a more populated site closer to home, as we were all very, very uneasy about what had transpired. I'm not even sure what I think happened. All I know is that this is the creepiest feeling that I ever felt. Whenever myself and the friend who I woke up with get together, the conversation ends with what the hell happened that night. I got a very creepy phone call once. A distraught woman called me one day demanding to know where her son was, who had been missing for weeks. I had no idea who she was, and I certainly didn't know her son. And she was actually calling from another state that I had never been to. I asked her how she got my phone number, and she said that she found it written on a piece of paper, along with my full name, in her son's desk drawer. Needless to say, I was creeped out. I really didn't think that I could help her in any way, so I politely ended the conversation. For a while after that, I thought that I would be getting a surprise visit from some detectives or something, because all of a sudden it felt like I was connected to something sinister. But nothing ever came of it, and I never heard from the woman again. When I was around 9 or 10 years old, my family had a big family reunion at my great-aunt's house, a giant Victorian-era mansion with a huge backyard. I remember there was nobody there my age, and all the adults became eventually drunk, so I wandered around the house and quickly found the upstairs library that I thought was neat, because it also had a back hallway with a tiny bedroom and full bathroom. I remember I was sitting on the library rug, I think playing with a black and gold check printing machine, when a kid in the hallway suddenly said, "You're not supposed to play with guns, Bill." I wasn't playing with guns, and my name wasn't Bill. But I thought, cool, another kid my age. I looked back and didn't see anything. Then I hopped up and went around the door, but there was no one there. I went down the stairs and found my mom and asked if she had seen a kid my age, to which she said no. I looked all around, and there was no other kids my age. Fast forward, when I was a late teenager, my mother told me that her father, named Bill, who had died before I was born, had killed his friend with a gun accidentally when he was 13, in that house. Nobody ever talked about it in the family. Fast forward 40 more years. I was now driving with my great aunt, Bill's sister, who had stayed in that house until she was 90, back to her assisted living apartment. She was about 105 years old. I asked where Bill had shot that kid, and she said it was in the upstairs library. This happened 3 years ago. I was half asleep and felt like I was being watched. I woke up completely and looked out my window and saw an old man hunched over, looking into my window, standing in the middle of my backyard. He was looking right at me. I rubbed my eyes, and when I looked again, he was walking towards my window. I got up out of bed and was frozen standing in my bedroom. The old man smiled at me and then dropped below the window out of sight. I didn't sleep that night or the night after, and I never saw the man again. I went on a Tinder date a couple years ago. Everything started out relatively normal. We met at a nice downtown restaurant for dinner. She was even prettier in person, and the conversation was flowing. However, it didn't take long for me to realize that she was a very private person. For example, she would not tell me her last name, where she worked, or say anything at all about her family. She made it clear that she was protecting herself, and honestly, I don't blame her. I shrugged it off and the date continued. She took great interest in the fact that I was in seminary, studying to be a pastor. That was nice because usually that's a deal breaker for most women, at least in my experience. Towards the end of our meal, she confessed something to me. "I have something to tell you," she said, "but please don't think I'm crazy." I braced myself for whatever she was about to say. She explained that she recently moved into a new apartment. She lived alone, which was also a new thing. Though she couldn't put her finger on it, she was convinced that there was a presence of a sinister and paranormal nature in her apartment. She had hardly slept since she moved in because she was plagued with constant nightmares and strange occurrences. I could see the fear and exhaustion in her eyes. She seemed quite sincere. "I can tell you're a good guy," she said. She elaborated that I seemed trustworthy and had a calming presence. "I know how this sounds, but would you please come back home with me tonight? Honestly, I'm just scared to go back there alone. I am not looking for sex." I was really taken back by this. It's not every day I get asked to spend the night with a beautiful woman whom I had just met. I figured she was either telling the truth or she picked a really odd way to initiate sex. Either way, the night would be interesting. We talked for a bit longer, and I agreed to spend the night with her. I followed her home, and when I walked into her apartment, I was immediately struck with bad vibes. There was just something ominous about that place. I didn't want to freak her out, so I kept these feelings to myself. I said a quick prayer and followed her to the bedroom. She wasn't kidding about the sex. I tried my luck, but was met with swift rejection. We kissed and cuddled for a bit, nothing too crazy, and then she fell asleep. I just laid there for a while in the silent darkness, lost in thought. Sometime later, I 100% heard someone walking down the hallway outside of the room. The door was closed, however, so I couldn't see anything. I was definitely frightened, but my curiosity got the better of me, so I went to investigate. Slowly, I opened the door. I looked to my left, and then to my right. Nothing. I walked downstairs to check out the rest of the apartment. Nothing. I went back upstairs to check the bathroom and the guest bedroom. Nothing. When I walked out of the guest room, which was right across from my date's bedroom, I looked to my left and to my right again. At the end of the hallway, I saw a black figure standing there perfectly still. It was almost like a shadow, but I could discern that it was, in fact, a three-dimensional figure. This figure was very large in stature. There's no way it could have been my date. She was maybe 5'1" at best. I ran back into my date's room. To my horror, she wasn't in bed where I left her. I called out her name, but there was no response. I had just walked through the entire apartment, so it literally made no sense to me that she wasn't there. The bed was low to the ground, so she couldn't be under it. The closet was opened also, and it was packed with boxes, so I knew that she wasn't there either. The window was shut tight, plus it was the second story. She had vanished. I grabbed my wallet, my keys, and my cell phone, and ran out of the apartment in nothing but my underwear. The shadowy figure was gone. I jumped in my car and sped away. I never heard from her again. Her Tinder profile was deleted the next day, and she never responded to any of my texts. To this day, I have no idea what the hell happened that night. I also never went back to her apartment. This was hands down the most terrifying, inexplicable thing that ever happened to me. I was sitting on my bed, trying to ignore the texts my abusive ex was sending me. I was dating my now husband, and my ex didn't take kindly to it. He was sending me text after text, switching between being apologetic and threatening me. I was sitting on the bed. The headboard was against the window, and I was leaning on it. Eventually, I grabbed my phone and text back, telling him to stay the hell away from me, when I hear his message tone go off right behind me. I turn around, open the curtains, and he was sitting right there in the bushes. This was a few years ago. I lived in an apartment, and in my room, if you looked out the window, you could see another building that had a lot of offices. And every night, I would be able to see a black figure just standing there watching me. It was scary as hell. I tried flashing a light at it a few times to see a person or something, but it was just a black figure, and sometimes it would move. As soon as the sun would start setting, I would close the blinds, and I did that for a few months, and eventually, the black figure didn't show up anymore. To this day, I still have no idea what or who it was, and it still creeps me out.
Pause it. Head home. I'll see you guys at home. I'll catch a bus in the usual. I'll see you guys when I'm at home, like I said before. Here we are, at home. Let's head to bed, wake up in the morning, rag, cross, head to school. Hey boss. Hey boss. Hey, I'm walking back up. Head to bed, you know the usual shit. Gang gang. Head to bed. See you in the morning. 5 in the morning, let's head to school. Gang gang, you heard. See boss. See boss. See you guys. I'm walking back up. I'll see you guys when I'm at the school. When I catch the bus, you know the usual shit. See you then. Well, here we are. Head to school, you know the usual shit. It's another day of school, yo. Gang gang. Another day of high school. For me anyway. Go around here, the school should be down here, usual. Here we are, the school. To cross, why not? Smoke some weed somewhere and watch YouTube. You know? Rock usual, of course. Smoke some weed. Here we do. Press play. A blunt for day.
I was traveling out of the country right after finishing up a huge 5-day work event, where I had about 10 hours of sleep total during the 5 days. I got to the motel, which is kind of run down, and the carpet and blankets are damp, but I'm so exhausted that I don't really care, and I don't really think about it. I fall asleep pretty much immediately at like 8 p.m. At maybe 11 p.m. or so, I get a call from the front desk saying that there's been a complaint about noise. I tell them that that's impossible, that I've been sleeping. They ask me if maybe it's someone else in the room, and I tell them no, I'm here alone, so there's definitely no one else making the noise, not from my room at least. They ask me again if I'm sure. I'm very frustrated at this point, and I say yes, and then go back to sleep immediately once we hang up the phone. When I woke up in the morning and thought about it some more, I realized how weird the entire interaction was. There was absolutely no noise that I could hear anywhere nearby, and I don't know why the motel staff would need to clarify so many times that I was alone. Apparently, they never called, so I assume it must have been someone calling the different rooms to see who was in the rooms and how many people. I've never been so glad that the rooms come with that extra chain lock. When I was like 14 or 15, I went with my family to Las Vegas, and we stayed off the main strip in a 2-bedroom suite. It was a smaller casino hotel. My parents left to go out and enjoy the night, while I stayed with my younger siblings. They slept in the bedrooms, and I was in the living room watching TV. I think I dozed off at around midnight. I don't know what happened. Maybe that night I did. Maybe something happened during those hours that I cannot remember. But it was creepy enough for me to share. Probably the most bizarre thing that's ever happened to me. I arrived late at a hotel for a business trip. The flight had a malfunction, so we had to land. They fixed it on the tarmac, and we never deplaned. Room already paid for, confirmation number in hand, etc. I got there about 5 hours after I was supposed to be there. Of course, they gave away my room. I already wasn't happy from all the delays, and I wasn't going anywhere. The event I was there for was in their hotel. I wanted my room. I was polite, but resolutely firm. They did some scrambling and asked if I would consider a damaged room that was under construction. As long as the sheets are clean so I can go to bed, I don't care, was my response. Mistake. The room they gave me was literally a crime scene. The case had been closed, so there was no legal issue to contend with, but someone had been killed, or at least nearly killed, in that room. They had primed over the blood stains on the walls and the ceiling, but had only taped down semi-clear plastic over the pooled blood on the carpets. Multiple small holes in the walls had obviously been patched and sanded, but they were multiple small holes in the walls. They gave me a completely new bed and TV from on-site inventory, so I was comfortable, but man, it was creepy as hell. The creepiest part was the priming job. It was so obviously blood splatter all over the walls. You could still see the pink underneath the white. You could see where the person had been hit and where they fell. You could also see how they tried to get up and where they had finally collapsed. I checked into a hotel on vacation. Everything was going all right. I woke up one night to erratic movement of the door handle, as if someone was trying to get in or break the door down. It always happened in the dead of the night when I was in a deep sleep. As soon as I woke up, it would stop. I spoke to a hotel manager about it, and he told me it was a patient who was recently released from a mental institution, who does this as he still thinks he's locked up in the institute. A combination of not taking his medication and sleepwalking makes him randomly try to open and kick down the doors within the hotel. The family was very wealthy and connected, and the manager didn't want to kick up a fuss for for chucking out someone who can shut his business down very quickly and easily. I left after only 1 week because it seemed to get worse every night. This story still makes me shudder. We were traveling with another couple who had budget restrictions, and we needed to find a last-minute place to stay in Las Vegas. We had been looking forward to a nice hotel with a pool to kick it by and just chill out. They couldn't afford it, so they found a super cheap Airbnb with a pool. We were trying to be good, flexible travelers, so we agreed to compromise. As we were driving to the place, I tried to ignore the increasing amount of poverty and strung out people on drugs on the street looking lost. I pulled into the apartment lot, and I said nothing. My husband and I looked at each other. It looked like a seedy apartment place from District 13. As we walked into the building, I was overcome by the smell. It was sweet, and at the same time, horrible beyond belief, with a layer of perfume on top. My body would not let me breathe in the smell, and I had to cover my mouth with my shirt sleeve in order to breathe. I was on the tail end of the flu, so I had been nauseous for days, and figured I was just being sensitive. We hurried to see the pool, and it had a big sign, under renovation. Covering my mouth as we went back into the building, we checked out our apartment. It was clean, and the smell didn't permeate into it, so we agreed to stay. That next morning, I woke up having had the worst dreams of my life. People getting stabbed and shot. Constant horror all night in my head. My husband seemed interested in what I had dreamt about, and I didn't want to get into it, so I just said it was people being hurt. When we got home in a couple of days, I brought up the smell in the hallway. It wasn't until then that my husband told me that it was the odor of a decaying human body. Oh, thank you very much for telling me. My husband is a paramedic, so he knew for sure what the smell was. He smells the worst smells known to humanity on a weekly basis. At university, I used to work through the night to get projects finished, but would break at around 2 a.m. to go for a walk. The city where I studied had excellent footpaths that meant you could walk from anywhere to anywhere without crossing a single road. The path system had bridges and underpasses. One night, when my final project wasn't compiling for whatever reason, I went walking and found what I thought was a glove at the entrance to an underpass. Further inside was what looked like some refuse sacks. But something felt really wrong. So being an indestructible, naive 20-year-old, I investigated to find that the glove was actually a severed hand, and the refuse sacks were a dismembered body. One quick phone call to the police later, and I missed my deadline being questioned by the police. When I was 15, my much older cousin was going through a nasty divorce. She and her 2 little boys fled from her abusive husband and moved very far away to be closer to us, the rest of her family. Her husband ended up following her to our town and rented a room from a guy that he knew from years back. He was threatening her and the kids almost daily. I drove with my cousin to pick up her son from school one afternoon. She walked in and was told by the teacher that their father had collected them earlier that day. She completely freaked out and drove straight to the police station, where she begged them to accompany her to the apartment to get her kids back. We drove there with the 2 police officers in tow. When we arrived, an older lady was there banging on the door, saying that she hadn't heard from her son, the guy that owned the apartment, in days, and that she was worried. His car wasn't there, but she knew something wasn't right. Police eventually break in the door after speaking to the neighbors and hearing stories of a fight a few nights ago, and probably the awful smell coming from the inside. We found the guy he was living with dead, rolled up in a carpet behind the couch. I still remember the top of the head just barely sticking out of the rug when we all noticed it. They found her husband that afternoon, in the victim's car, with the two boys thankfully unharmed. He tried to use the guy's credit card to rent a car, but he probably knew that they would be looking for that one too. I had plans to take my grandma out to lunch one day. I showed up at her house at noon as I normally did, but she didn't answer the door.